Welcome to this second hour of the Context USA, and we are hearing that those files being released by the Department of Justice in Washington are actually being published. Let me just tell you that the Department of Justice website is saying that all reasonable efforts have been made to review and redact personal information pertaining to the victims, and that it is being published. So we are just waiting for the details of those files. Hundreds of thousands of documents relating to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, that's right. This is on the Department of Justice's website, and our correspondent Nomia Iqbal has been sitting across this all afternoon. She's in our newsroom right now. Nomia, I know these were just released. Give us a sense of what you're looking at.
Yes, so we had to wait in a queue to get into this particular part of the Department of Justice website, and it says Epstein Library. But as Ben outlined there is a privacy notice that comes with it. It's clear that the Department of Justice has been racing against this deadline to get these documents published, because it also says at the end of this privacy note, if there's any information that should not have been posted, please notify us immediately on this email, so we can take steps to correct the problem as soon as possible. It's quite clear there's lots of files here, and it's going to take us some time to go through it. We've got teams here in Washington, D.C., as well as in London. If I can just turn my laptop to you. So basically, you've got the Epstein Library there, and then at the bottom, you've got court records, DOJ disclosures, Freedom of Information Act, House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform disclosures. And then when you go into that, so if I go into court records, there is a lot of information. It looks like there are indictments in there, which will obviously take some time to go through. And so basically now it's a case of just looking to see what the criminal investigations into Jeffrey Epstein involve, exactly, what tips were given to the public, for example, who was investigating, and all those questions around Jeffrey Epstein. But it will take some time to go through it before we can probably say to you what is very new here.
Yeah, Nomia, we actually pulled up the website on our screen for our viewers to look at. It says Epstein Library on the top, and I'm just going to read this notice from this Department of Justice website. It says, in view of the congressional deadline, all reasonable efforts have been made to review and redact personal information pertaining to victims, other private individuals, and protect sensitive materials from disclosure. It goes on to say, that said, because of the volume of information involved, this website may nevertheless contain information that inadvertently includes non-public, personally identifiable information or other sensitive content, to include matters of a sexual nature. Nomia, interesting that clearly we know that in the lead up to today, this deadline, of course, Congress passed this law to compel the Department of Justice to release these files. In the lead up to this deadline, we know there was really scrambling at the Department of Justice to go through all these files.
Yes, and there was plenty of criticism, certainly by Democratic lawmakers, that they were essentially trying to cover things up that might make President Trump look bad. Remember, President Trump was close with Jeffrey Epstein once upon a time. There's plenty of videos out there that show that. But Mr. Trump said that he cut ties with him a long time ago in the early 2000s, and there's never been any evidence of wrongdoing. The Republicans deny that. The Department of Justice denies that. They say that they need to carefully go through everything to make sure that that things aren't compromised. And it's worth reminding, this law that was enacted last month, signed by Donald Trump, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, does say that there are certain conditions in which you have to redact the files, and that includes anything that's personally identifiable in terms of Epstein's victims, any materials that depict child sexual abuse, anything that depicts violent physical abuse, any records that would jeopardize an ongoing federal investigation, or any classified documents that the Department of Justice feels must stay secret to protect national defense or foreign policy. So there are reasons for things to be redacted, but Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has to be very clear on why there are those redactions and I think it will be on everything that we see redacted. We'll go through that. But the redaction, I should add, is temporary. And we'll see exactly what's been redacted. I think there's, like I say, there are certainly those who are critical of this whole operation. They think that these files should have been out a lot sooner. The Democrats particularly, they will object, I think, to any sort of redactions that are made, because they believe that this has been an administration that has been hugely reluctant to do this, to publish the Epstein files, despite the fact that Donald Trump did say on the campaign trail in 2024 he would release everything. And I suppose he can say that by releasing the files today, and it will be done over a couple of weeks, we understand that he has stuck to that promise.
And Nomi, I mean, obviously we're still working to see what's going to be in these files. I know you and your team there are going to be on that as soon as you get the details, and you'll report that for us. But in the meantime, how damaging has all of this saga been for President Trump, do you think? And the splits within, his own MAGA movement over this whole issue of releasing the files?
Well, I think the way he's done this bizarre U-turn on it has confounded lots of his supporters, particularly those in Congress, such as Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, a real firebrand, has supported Donald Trump through thick and thin, has really broken away from him on this one. In fact, he's been pretty angry at her over her insistence that these files be released. Donald Trump campaigned on the promise of releasing them. Once he got into office, he did this U-turn in which he said that there was nothing to see here. There were some files released by the Department of Justice earlier in the year, but Pam Bondi was hugely criticised for not being more transparent and sort of changing course on it. In that Vanity Fair article that's got everyone talking about the Trump administration, and Susie Wiles, Donald Trump's chief of staff, very powerful, very influential woman, said to herself in the article that Pam Bondi had essentially dropped the ball on the Jeffrey Epstein files, and that they hadn't realised just how important these files were. Now, I do also think this is a huge moment for Donald Trump right now, politically and personally. Like I said, he pushed for years for these files to be released, and he was outmanoeuvred in the end by a groundswell of bipartisan lawmakers who basically said we need to pass this law, which he signed December the 19th. And I think also, why do Americans care about this? And there are plenty of Americans out there who do. I think the Epstein case has become this almost byword for government cover-ups, elite protection, systemic failure. And Donald Trump promised that he would release all the files as a way of saying to them that we won't have any cover-ups, we will tell you what's going on. He's the anti-establishment politician, remember. And so that's why there's been huge pressure. But as I say, we'll see what these files show, because I think that even if all the files are out there, it might not satisfy everyone.
Nomi, just for anybody who's just joining us here on The Context on BBC News, let's just briefly repeat the situation we're in at the moment, which is a little bit strange, because we know that the files, the long-awaited files, have finally begun to be released by the Department of Justice, but we haven't actually got our hands on them yet. We can't see anything at the moment, but it should be any minute now. Is that right?
That's right. So just to remind people, these Epstein files are very different to all the documents that we've been talking about. We were talking about them yesterday, last week. These were documents released by the Oversight Committee, by the Jeffrey Epstein, via the Jeffrey Epstein estate via Congress. OK, so this is different. What these are related to two criminal investigations, these Epstein files, so-called Epstein files, by the US Justice Department. And they have so much information. There's interviews, there's transcripts of victims and witnesses. There are items confiscated from raids on various properties. There are tips from the public. There are indictments that were filed, unfiled. And we should get an insight into exactly what investigators had their hands on. And I think people ultimately want answers to lots of questions on why wasn't he charged earlier? What happened around the time that he was found dead in his jail cell in 2019? Remember, there are plenty of people out there who do not believe that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide. Now, we're not sure yet if this is the first of multiple batches, so we don't know yet exactly everything about this. And as we were saying before, Ben and Sumi, there's lots of information that will be redacted. Anything that relates to active criminal investigations, anything that identifies victims, anything that shows abuse, death or injury, we will not see. But there should be clear explanations with those files about why there has been a redaction.